Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Quench. We are so excited to be here with you, as always, since February of this year in our live in-person location, Copia, in the beautiful Napa Valley. And we have, as usual, but what makes it great about being here is that we get to have an in-person audience. And so we have a bunch of our friends and neighbors. Everybody wave to John over here and let him know that you are, and let's just give a round of applause to our fantastic Copia service team who are doing the very last of our service, because we are doing, our theme tonight is called Behind the Blind. And let's just, if you've just recently been on a flight and got to sit in the seats where they give you the amenity kit, you got one of these things. But the truth of the matter is that we actually get to see the wine when we're blind tasting. You've got a subscribe button there if you're watching at home. I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel and join us so you always get reminders of future classes, future episodes of Quench. But let me introduce my guest tonight, Kim Oshiro, Master of Wine. She's America's newest Master of Wine. So let's everybody give a toast to Kim. That accomplishment is insane. It is really, really hard to do. And there are a lot of people here who probably have taken a wine class. Well, wait a minute. It's not a real toast unless I drink some, so. Right. So delicious. We're actually jumping right into the wines, though, because as you can see, our first two wines, and we're still waiting on number 2 up here. Probably most of you have them poured. You're going to taste them side by side. And because one of the easiest things about blind tasting that people don't think about, and Kim, tell me if you don't agree with this, is that it's a lot easier when you have more than one, right? Because you have a comparison or reference point.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead, everybody, get the first 2 wines in front of you, wines 1 and 2, and make sure you keep them in order so that you can keep tabs on what your impressions are based on the actual glass that we're talking about. You also have, Kim, you actually developed this, a very cool guiding sheet that you can use to just circle some of your impressions. And because the first thing, of course, with 2 bubbly products is the bubbles. And actually, it's just, let's establish your credibility with us right away. We're going to go to our first poll, and we'll let everybody have an opportunity to see if you can scan that QR code. Let's jump back to the poll. There we go.
No, we need Q1.
I got it. I'll get that. But in the meantime, you can do, you guys can look at the QR code and get that scanned up there. And let's see if we're having any luck with that. Is everybody managing to get your code scanned in? Okay. My 21-year-old daughter was successful. Cool. I got a lot of, all right, let's see, how many participants do I have here? Yep, they're showing up. And I've already got some votes. So you guys are really, really, really smart. None of you thought that glasses 1 and 2 were Pilsner beers or brands of ginger ale. So excellent. We are off to a good start with this crowd.
I expected somebody to put at least 1 Pilsner.
Yes, exactly. All right, so let's jump back to the wines. And what we're going to be talking about is, of course, the very first thing you need to start. They should start by taking a look, right? Taking a look at the wines, and because you're seeing the bubbles. And what should we know about bubbly wine when we're trying to evaluate it blind?
Absolutely. The great thing is that if your glass has even the tiniest bit of edge in it, you can see the bubbles forming and rising in your glass. So you're looking at the size of the bubbles, the speed the bubbles rise, and the persistence over time as you're tasting this.
Okay, so size matters. Okay, and the other thing that I think of it as, like, I think you'll relate to this. We always are kind of trying to have reference points for things that help people remember. So for me, if you're talking about like larger bubbles versus smaller, finer bubbles, it's kind of like Sir Mix-a-Lot versus Don Ho, right? I like bigger bubbles and I cannot lie. You bubbly lovers can't deny. We got a couple people in the back giving me the high sign there, which is good. We should show that. But anyway, versus Don Ho, which is tiny bubbles in the wine. Help me figure out what kind. Maybe, right? Maybe. So we've got, and we still don't have our number 2, but maybe there's some in here. Let's just see. All right, we'll get them to pour that first in a second. But you've got, most of you have number 2, so you can look at them and taste. Okay, so you're taking that into account. And so if there's larger bubbles versus smaller bubbles, what's the main reason for that? I'm asking you.
Nobody has an idea. Yeah, you're looking at the method of production, which is largely based on the format size of the second fermentation vessel and the time that it spends during second fermentation.
So yeah, we should say that these are quality sparkling wines where the CO2 gets there by a second fermentation with yeast and sugar, not injection with carbon dioxide from a cylinder like a soda, right? That's because there are sparkling wines that are made that way, and those are the ones that we all thought were champagne in college, and we were happy it was like $1.99 a bottle, at least when I was in college. We were like, wow, Andre, cold duck, this is awesome. And we thought it was champagne, and then we went, wait, what? But so these are 2 quality sparkling wine methodologies, but so you're talking about, basically, how should people refer to them? It's like tank and traditional, or?
Tank and traditional is easy and doesn't cause arguments.
Okay. So the second fermentation either takes place in a big tank, or alternatively, it takes place
in its own bottle, or in the very large format and small format are in a 750 milliliter bottle.
Yeah. So the usual bottle that it comes in, that's where that second fermentation is going to take place. And then, so what's the difference? Like, which one gives you the bigger bubbles and the less versus the more persistent, smaller bubbles?
The smaller vessel is useful for the bubble size, and sense that as the bubbles form from the secondary fermentation and the yeast producing the carbon dioxide, they'll bounce up and down along the bottle. So a very small surface area and formation of much smaller bubbles.
Got it. So they integrate more in the bottle rather than in a large tank. And then I think the other thing. So let's just get some impressions here, because you're now tasting them and comparing them side by side. First of all, let's just go to the nose, the bouquet. And like, if you're tasting wine number 1, are you tasting more of a fruit fresh impression, or are you tasting something more yeasty impression? And just, and there's no wrong answers here, because we all have our different degree of what we're exposed to. What are we thinking? Much more fresh fruit. And so that, why would that be? And what could that be a clue to? It's not that necessarily that the grapes are fruitier, but if you're getting more fruit, what method would that typically lead you to guess? I'm asking you.
That's
You're the new master of wine.
I'm used to teaching classes. I'm like, hey.
She's like, everyone's supposed to raise their hand and go, teacher, I want, give me the brownie points. The more fruit-driven wine.
The great thing about having a fruit-driven wine is that it's not as impacted by the yeast influence.
Right.
And you have that very fresh, bright, lively quality that you can only get from very fresh, lively.
So when you're doing, when you've done that fermentation in the tank, the typical the tank method sparkling wine, is sitting in that tank with the yeast how long?
Yeah, you're only looking at about 30 to maybe 80 days versus the time in bottle for another wine,
Traditional.
which may or may not be wine too, 9 months up to, 8 years, 12 years?
So if you've had a second fermentation in the bottle, or a traditional method sparkling wine, how many people have had a Spanish cava, for example? Right, okay, so that is required by law to be traditional method. The classic is, of course, French champagne. How many people have had that? How many people are ready to take the I will never call sparkling wine champagne generically thing, all right? I promise never to call everything with bubbles champagne by default. Never to call everything with bubbles champagne by default. Because I want to be let back into France. Right? They just are not happy with us when we do that, right? The facial tissue people that make Kleenex are fine for you to call it Kleenex because that's brand recognition for them. But if you use champagne generically, it's kind of understandable that they don't like us to do that, right?
I think if everybody called Cabernet worldwide Napa, it would not go over well for us either.
Yes, that's a great example, and that's why the name is so protected. So as you're looking at your sheets here and you're tasting the wine, so on wine 1, you probably went with the nose. You probably did, circle fruit and flowers and herbs, or at least on the. Does anybody get a floral quality to that? Yeah, there's quite a few of you actually. Okay, and then on wine number 2, which we're still needing to get it poured for us, but wine number 2, just some impressions. What's standing out to you on that wine? Yeah, yeasty. What else? Anything? Is the fruit more juicy and ripe and explosive, or is it more restrained? What are you thinking? More restrained. And so when you're looking at a situation like that, it's that maybe at that point that the winemaking is more expressing itself over the grape variety. And why would that be? When the wine is sitting a longer time in the bottle with the yeast, that's a possibility of that. So I've given you a pretty darn strong hints there. But let's talk about your impressions of the bubbles on the wine as well. Visually, there's a lot of pretty words for the visuals of the bubbles on a traditional method wine, right? I mean, you know what I'm talking about. The petulance and the bead and there's some other one I can't think of right now. The pearl, right? It's perlant or something like that. So it's really got that visual of a very, very fine bubble. And then what about the texture? When you get it on your palate, so almost a creamy quality to it. Thank you, love. Almost a creamy quality to it, I would say. Do you agree with that? Yeah. Oh, well, it's a lovely wine, right?
I've been waiting for this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, but it's interesting because I love the kind of frothy, almost like lively. It's like seafoam bubbles versus the wine number 2 is more like almost no bubbles at all. Not that they're not there, but it's almost makes you more think of like whipped cream or something because it fills up the mouth without being like that.
It doesn't have that frothiness. It's
Yeah.
like if you brush your teeth well and you've got
Yeah.
lots of foam.
Yeah, exactly. So let's take a look at, we've got a little image for you to just kind of lock in the idea of bubble size because you've all had like the Starbucks like protein foam, and you can see the bubbles that are bigger. They're visually bigger versus the kind of creamier, finer when there's a lot more emulsification and the bubbles are smaller. So we've given you the tip off there that that's a tank method usually is your larger bubble, and your smaller bubble is in the second fermentation in the bottle or traditional method. And then for us, we've been talking a little bit about it texturally. And we oftentimes are looking for words, right, that speak to texture, and it's in the wine space. Fabric is very often the way we do it, because your skin, you know, your tongue, your mouth is skin too, but your body, like if you're wearing tweed or if you're wearing pashmina, if you're sleeping on 200 thread count or if you're sleeping on silk or satin, it feels different, right? So like if you were talking about these texturally, you know, what do you think?
Right. For me, wine 1 is a much looser knit, but a fuzzier yarn,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
And wine 2 is a tighter spun yarn, but tighter knit,
Yeah.
a higher thread count.
Finer weave, yeah. And it's for me, when I get the ones that are frothier and more prickly, I think that's a great thing for certain types of food. So we do have a fantastic pairing plate, and we might just be able to show a little image of that. But we've got some great ideas or great dishes here that you could enjoy having something prickly with. But what we have is mushroom duxelle, which is the little, very, very finely chopped mushrooms. It's basically like seasoned earth. It's delicious with certain of these wines. Then our cheese is the sheep's milk euphoria. It's like a Gouda style, lots of crystals, lots of toastiness. Then we have a Spanish style chorizo, so you're gonna have a little spice there. That's where I think the scrubbing bubbles come in. But we also have a bacala, a spicy bacala with a lemon tofu. That is, we actually have already tasted it with like everything, and we really like it with a lot of them. And then smoked salmon, which I think you need because of that. When you've got that smokiness, the fishiness, when you've got the fat, you want some bubbles with that. So I think that before we move on from the sparkling wines and reveal them, we're gonna ask you to guess. We're not gonna make you do this every time, but we'll go to our poll, and we want you to guess, and I'll just tell you that Spanish cava is a traditional method wine. Italian Asti Spumante is a tank method wine. French Champagne is traditional method, and Italian Prosecco is tank. So you get to guess on wine number 1. Let's see, I've got 1 vote. Somebody's precocious in there. Is anybody else gonna vote with me on this poll? Let's see, we got a few. Oh boy, look at these people, all right? We've got somebody okay, we got some guesses here. This is great. All right, we are up to 14. So about half of the crowd is voting. Everybody else is eating and drinking with just revelrous abandon, which I totally understand. Okay, I'll close it out here in just a second. Anybody else want another minute to vote? All right, yep, we've got a couple people.
It's like watching the races.
I know.
They're moving.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so lots of votes, about half of you for, little over half for Italian Prosecco. You are correct. So nice job. We got a couple of triumphant fist bumps up there. So let's take a quick look before we jump away, because for those of you who are maybe interested in blind tasting, Kim made a great slide that's the kind of the tell for some of the aromatics for Prosecco. So we're going to take a quick look at which, you know, how many people have acacia planted in their yard, but if you get a chance to smell acacia blossom, there's a tree on Lodi Lane that blooms in the spring. There's a bunch of them around here, I'm sure. But that's the first time I was able to smell it and understand. And then, you know, the green apple, the crisp pomaceous fruits are like right there. So, so delicious wines. I think, did you try any of the pairings? I think I'm gonna do, before we move on, I'm gonna do the chorizo with the Prosecco. Anybody have any things you've tried so far that you like?
Popcorn.
Popcorn for the win. And then Kim, you were saying that the Taittinger Brut La Française are the champagne wine number 2, which I just revealed, so never mind on the poll. That's what I get for, well, I wasn't even spitting the wine, but with the Euphoria cheese. So let's take a look at wine number 1. We'll reveal that bottle, and you've got it behind you, but we can also show it. So this is the Nino Franco Rustico Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore DOCG. So it's a mouthful of a wine, and it's a mouthful of a wine pronunciation. And then our wine number 2, let's go ahead and reveal that one. And this is the Taittinger Brut La Française. So 40% Chardonnay, That's not typical of the usual champagne unless it's a Blanc de Blanc to have that much Chardonnay or more. But this is classic to the Taittinger, the House of Taittinger style. And what's cool about these two wines is they're two really classic examples. You've been to both regions, correct?
Yes, and I've been to the to Taittinger winery as well. Yeah.
So what they have that very few wineries have there is really something that it so distinguishes the region. They have those underground chalk cellars called the Crayère. And has anybody ever had a chance to visit that part of Champagne? Got a few people in the audience who've tried it. Just talk a little bit about that real quick, what that does for the wine.
The chalk?
Yes.
I mean, what it did for history was incredible, and they will tell you their long storied history of mining the caves to build the city and
back to Roman times, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
400-ish.
Incredible.
What it does, and then through, of course, the world wars, it helped people survive and wine survive. But what it does now is allow a very, very, because they're deep. They're, what, 6 stories underground or so?
Yeah, you take an elevator down and it takes a little time. I think I think they say it's like the perfect temperature and the perfect humidity for aging the wines. And they've all been these because that chalk holds moisture, and so they don't have to do any refrigeration. They don't have to do any humidification. And those of you who visited wineries here in the Napa Valley, sometimes they have to spend quite a lot of money on refrigerating the barrel areas to minimize evaporation, but also just give that perfect temperature for long aging of the wines. And that's the other thing here. So we looked at that at the Taittinger, and it's 4 to 5 years on the lees, but it can go up as long as how much?
Gramona, 12 years.
Right.
They've and of course the Boulanger, who knows?
Right. But a lot recently disgorged.
Maybe 8 years or so.
Yeah.
And as that time progresses, the bubbles do get smaller even. And as the wine is in the bottle on its yeast, on its lees, it takes on a different mouthfeel, aromatics, and
it just
flavors.
becomes incredibly amazing. Just like us, the longer we age, the more amazing and incredible we become, right?
We are autolytic.
We are autolytic, and whatever that means. We're just getting better and better with age. And so, if you didn't try the Euphoria with the Taittinger, please do me a favor, because you will be asking for my social security number to put me in your will. After you have that pairing, well, maybe not, but it is delicious. If you eat cheese, this cheese is like at Sunshine Foods and a lot of other places, and it is just the magic fairy dust. And thank you, Chef Chris Limeran from the Grove, who created this beautiful pairing plate. And when you sent me the list with the bacala, we were like, interesting. It's so good with so many of these wines. This is crazy. So this is a signature recipe of the house, correct? So Chef has a Michelin star pedigree, and he's right here at the Grove at Copia. So when you come to Napa, that is a place to dine for sure. Of course, after you come to be a part of our in-person audience here. For sure. Okay, so really, really super fun starting point. You feel like you know a little bit more about how comparing sparkling wines and tasting them side by side? It's pretty interesting and tells you a lot, especially the bubble piece of it. I will say the last thing I'll say about these two regions. Prosecco is a big region, but there is a sub-district, a subsection of Prosecco, which is what we have here, the more distinctive. And both the Conegliano Valdobbiadene hills of Prosecco and the Crayères of Champagne are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. What does that mean? If they get that designation, it means that they're protected for history. They can't change a lot about the place. But it also means that they are considered to have enduring value to humanity. So I think I will toast with both glasses because honestly, we wouldn't have some of these incredible places that are preserving nature and tradition if we didn't have mechanisms like that. So cheers to that. And what I always say is that you can't order it if you can't pronounce it. So we're going to do a quick video to show you how to pronounce Conegliano Valdobbiadene.
Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore.
Okay, what are we seeing right here and how does it impact the style of Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore?
First one, the rich biodiversity that make our landscape a sort of a puzzle. The shape of the Hara Hills is a sort of pyramid, a hogback, due to the geological origin. And the third one is the ciglioni. These narrow terraces give us the opportunity to grow the vines in so steep hills.
Eventually I'm tasting them all, right? Whee! No, Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore. So, okay, on the count of three, say it with me. Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore. And it's a lot easier if you use your hands with it. Yes, Conegliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore. And then they all say, very good in the back row, DOCG. But at least we didn't make you say Denominazione di Origine Controllata e Garantita, which is DOCG, right? So, yeah, but, and I did talk to the consortio about that, and I was like, don't you think that's kind of a marketing challenge? And they were like, yeah, but it's the tradition, and that's what we got. So now you know that when you see that on the list or on the label, it is those beautiful terraced hillsides. It's quite a special thing.
The rolling hills are just phenomenal.
Incredible and super steep, like really, 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 really challenging to farm. They're never going to change it, right? So that gives the distinction to that region versus Prosecco DOC, which is what you see, in the typical supermarket end cap. Not that these wines are overpriced. They're really great value for what you get.
And for the yield that they have, I think they're underpriced for all of that.
Yes,
that work.
Absolutely. And but we're happy to pay less right now, especially. Okay, so let's get to our glass number 3, and this is, of course, just a white wine. How do we get going on this? So Kim, if you're just confronted with a white wine glass, what are some of the things that you look at to start with? First of all, you're like, yay, I know it's white. It's not anything but white. So that's helpful. But then where do you take it from there?
Right. Well, and you can see it actually a little bit in wine 1 and 2, where 1 has a slight green tint and 2 has a slight salmon or pink tint, which may give you an idea too about the grape varieties. But this it's very pale in intensity, but it does have a little bit of a green tint.
So if I see a little bit of green,
yeah,
what do I think?
Signaling a grape variety that is perhaps tends towards green in color, but youth, perhaps lack of oxidation. It's been protected.
Okay.
Hasn't perhaps spent time in an oak barrel that would color it.
Okay, so sometimes if it's aged in oak, it's going to pick up color. What else, if it's aged in oak, might it pick up? And would we get it on the nose? Where are we going next with, obviously?
Oh, absolutely. The sweet pie spices of vanilla, nutmeg, cardamom, clove.
Yeah.
As well as perhaps a toastiness.
Toasty, nutty, things like that. So do you get toasty, nutty spice on this wine, or is this more clean fruit? Got somebody on the end saying clean. I am agreeing with you. Yep. It's very, okay, so then what else? So one of the things that I think helps people to think about with different grape varieties is to think about fruit, and unfortunately when it comes to wine, we complexify things, but this is, in this case, there's a good reason for it. We never describe wine as grapey, or hardly ever, even though it's made of grapes.
Maybe Muscat.
Yeah, exactly. But specifically Muscat grapes, which are very distinctive. So, but we describe it as all kinds of other fruits. There's a reason for that that we'll get into in a second. But let's take a look at our white wine fruit spectrum. You are seeing less acid and more kind of juicy, like really like voluptuousness to the fruit. That can be a grape variety that sits in one of those places, or it can be driven by where the wine is grown. Because generally, at least my opinion is that when you see more lean and tangy fruits, you see a wine coming from a place that's not as warm because you're not getting as much sugar in the ripe grapes. Fair
Exactly. You can have the same grape variety, and it will be lime and lemon peel from one region that's cooler, and perhaps even peach or pineapple when it does have more ripeness and more sunshine and heat on it.
So, and then another thing to really look at here is, so we've established, I think, that we feel like it's not got oak, or at least notable oak that's showing up on the wine. It might be a neutral oak vessel that doesn't contribute to the wine. And then we also have thought, given it that it's got a little bit of a green tint, which could take us to something that succeeds in a cooler climate, perhaps, that has its best versions there. What are you getting on the nose? I mean, and on the palate? Is the fruit lean and tangy? Is it juice and mouth-watering? Is it lush and exotic? Is it all of them? Between the juicy and the lush? Yep. Everybody's using, it's like we're using our hands but it has dimension to it. Even though it's a wine and I'm experiencing it as elegant, it still has a lot going on. So if somebody is dealing with this glass, what else can they look at? We've got on wine number 3, we know where our fruit sits. There's still some lemony stuff there too, but it has definitely got more exoticism to it. What about on the nose? Is there any floral? Is there any, is it fragrant? Like, do you want to dab it behind your earlobes?
Honeysuckle, yeah.
Nice, very nice. Okay, honeysuckle. So when you start to get into those things, because maybe that takes us away from something like Sauvignon Blanc, which is usually kind of more green and herbaceous and things like that. But if we're into these sort of sweeter flowers, what are some possibilities there?
Exactly. I don't get anything grassy off of this at all. It's definitely I'd say the whole range, even from like the very delicate apple blossom all the way to maybe jasmine.
Yeah. I mean, this is really fragrant. So when I have a fragrant, almost floral-driven grape, like what are some of the grapes that, like the laterals or the wines that, if you're tasting for the Master of Wine or the Wine and Spirits Education Trust, what are they usually, pointing you to?
The floral wines.
Yeah.
Torrontés.
Yep.
Muscat, Viognier, Gewürztraminer.
Yeah.
What else is floral?
Riesling, for sure.
Riesling.
And Albarino, tends to have some florals.
Yeah.
All right, so we're giving you a couple of choices there. Let's see if based on the kinds of descriptors that we've talked about here, and this is one that I really want you to try with the smoked salmon when you get a moment. But let's just see if anybody wants to. Everyone's like, no, I just want to drink the wine. I'm out of the business of voting here. Now I got a couple people who are jumping in here. Okay, we've got some Gruner Veltliner. We left that out, but that's one that's got a semi-aromatic profile to it as well. And so we've got a couple people voting on Chardonnay. And I will say that there are clones of Chardonnay that do have a floral to them, for sure.
Oh, for sure, yeah, the Muscat
So,
clone.
so those of you who voted Chardonnay, that's not off base at all. But generally speaking, the choices that we gave you here kind of are on a range between pretty neutral and winemaking driven versus floral and aromatic. And thank you, that was my, sorry about that. That was my Dropbox telling me I need to pay more money. But anyway, so we've got lots of votes for all German Riesling, Albarino, and Austrian Gruner Veltliner. So let's go ahead and do our reveal. And we've got a incredibly special wine here. We are so lucky to be able to have this wine. Let's actually do our show off the label as well. How many people? I know we had a good chunk of the room voting German Riesling. There's lots of people taking credit. Got somebody back there basically doing goal because it's the World Cup. And you're on a hat trick, right? Because we're on wine number 3. So you and Lionel Messi, you probably got the first 3 of them right. Okay, so yes, it is a German Riesling, and let's show it off because this is the little staircase of Erden. The village is Erden, and so if you're from New York, you're a New Yorker. If you're from Erden, you're an Erdener. And then Treppchen is Little Staircase, and that's the name of the vineyard, and you need a staircase for this very steep vineyard, but 100% Riesling, 100-year-old vines, and they're made in large casks, foeders, that are made of oak, but they're so big and they're so used and used again that you don't taste any oak in them. So this is basically the kind of wine that people with letters after their name freak out and geek out about. How many people like this wine? Raise your hand. Okay, good. We do not have to drop you down into the shark tank that's below your seat in our Napa Valley lair. Just kidding, but great wine.
Absolutely. But as we noted, there are a number of wines that have different fruit spectrum, florals. So what is it that makes this Riesling? And that's where we need to look at the palate.
And somebody said honeysuckle, which I think was helpful. I forgot who said that, but somebody said honeysuckle on the florals, which to me is a tell. But go to the palate with this because this is so important.
Yeah, I think the steely texture of this wine and the focus leads you. Yeah, it's a very pure wine that doesn't show a lot of winemaking technique.
It shows the vineyard,
Shows the vineyard.
old vines, and you said something about focus. There's a lot of detail there too. Every time you go back to the glass, there's a little bit more and a little bit more, and there's a word that typically applies more to like, sculpture or glass carving or wood carving, and I love the term that you used for this.
Precision?
Filigree. Filigree.
You can't talk about Riesling without saying filigree.
Yeah, and it's just because you get this beautiful base, but then you get these little textural things and aromatic things that weave in and out of it. So for us, when we're going back to our, I won't say our folding of the laundry because that's way more boring than our shopping trip. We're in lace land. So let's take a look at what private club or an English manor. Never been in one of those, but that's what I think of it when I watch Bridgerton. That's what they have on the table. And I think it's perfect.
Exactly, a very dense, very detailed fabric that will last decades.
Yeah, and the wine will too. I remember when I was visiting, speaking of honeysuckle, that always takes me to Mosel specifically in Germany, and that's this wine. But I was visiting Manfred Prüm in my mid-20s, And he asked me my birth year, and then he said, just a moment, and he went down to the cellar, and he came back with a wine for my birth year. And so, like I said, I was in my mid-20s. And this was a cabinet that probably had sold for $4 a bottle at the time that it came out. And it was the best white wine I've ever tasted. A 25-year-old, what had been $4 Riesling cabinet from Germany. So just, just saying, if you want to cellar wine, and especially get wine for birth years of significant, milestones in life, these are wines to check out. And they're great with food. I just had it with the smoked salmon. Anybody try that? That is a win. So, so good. I would also try it with the bacala, though, because I think that beautiful acid and that filigree detail would cut through and also kind of dance a little bit with the spice in a really nice way. If you have any left after the Prosecco, which I do, so I'm going to be getting back to that. Okay, so now what we want you to do, though, is as we move to red wine, is we want you to taste wines 4 and 5 side by side, because this is a path from color to identification, because color helps. First of all, one thing we do know about this wine is it is what color? Red. You guys are so good, I tell you. This is great. But when you look at the two of them against a white background, I think what you're going to see, and you can make a comparison to wine 6, especially with wine 4, you can do that real quick. You're going to see that both 4 and 5, especially 5, are translucent or limpid. You can see through them. So when that is the case, okay, that already helps you to eliminate some families of grape varieties, right? And so what would it not be? Just yell something out. What?
Did you say Pinot?
Good job, okay. It would not be Pinot from France or Uruguay. What else? What would it not be that's like right outside the door? Petite Syrah, okay.
Yeah.
That is true. What would it not be that's right outside the door and widely planted here? Napa Valley Cabernet, or any Cabernet, right.
Yeah.
So if you can see through it, that helps you eliminate some things. Okay, but what might it be? And then we'll talk about why there's less color here. But what are some grapes that it might be? Pinot Noir, exactly. It's not, possibly. What else? Any others that you come to mind? Potentially.
Could be.
Sometimes those are pretty dense in color, but they can be. What? Oh my gosh, here we go. We got an expert in row 3. Row 3 has been to northern Italy and is very smart about it. Okay, that's good. No,
Good. Yeah, what are your laterals? Could it be Grenache?
Could be, right? Absolutely. Come on, Italy people. What else? Don't say Frappato.
Yeah.
No, somebody said Nebbiolo. That would be one of the classics, right? And
Yeah.
maybe this is a good reason. Now go ahead and start smelling these wines. And this is a good quick jumping off point while you're smelling them. And you can go ahead and taste them too, but we're going to guide you a little bit on that, of where these different credentials differ, because you're unlikely to run into in the Master Sommelier sort of study track some of those more obscure grape varieties, like people mentioned Lagrein. In an exam setting, you're absolutely expected to know about it and you will be tested on it, but it might not be in the blind tasting. Whereas in the Master of Wine,
Anything goes.
anything goes, and it does. What was the weirdest wine you had the year you passed? Which, by the way, she passed her blind tasting the first attempt, which is really unusual. Bravo.
Barefoot Muscat.
Barefoot Muscat in the blind.
Up against in the same flight is Corton Charlemagne.
Okay. So what they're looking for there is, can she recognize obviously grape variety, but also quality level? Because there are really high quality Muscats. Barefoot Muscat is good quality for its price, but it's not going for a knock it out of the park or not, blow you away. It's going for a, poolside, or a lot of people say porch pounder type of situation, where it's just a super chill beverage. So she had to recognize that.
Sure, but this year's stage 2, they just released the wines and questions yesterday, and there was a Bandol Blanc on there right next to an Rustico.
From Greece. I saw that too, and I was like, oh boy, that's brutal stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and make sure and taste these wines, because now that we've sort of honed in on the idea that they're wines with not that much color, where do we go from there? Okay, thin skin. That could be, because the skins are where the color pigment is. The skins are also where the tannin is found. You guys are good.
Yeah.
We can't teach you anything.
You don't need to talk to me.
This
just,
is
just
great.
ask them, they know.
But there's kind of a misconception a lot of times, because if you just looked at these two wines, like if you just looked at them, like what would you think about the tannin based on appearance?
Right. So if I'm holding my glass above the white paper, I usually do it at about 45 degrees, so I can see the core to the room variation, if any. Wine number 5 looks a lot paler and lighter and potentially less tannic and thinner skinned.
Okay, so that means it's time to get it on your palate and decide if that's true. All right, so taste wine number 4, taste wine number 5, and then let's establish which one is higher in tannin. And if you're watching from home, first of all, thank you for joining us. And secondly, this is Quench, live from Copia in the Napa Valley, and we are doing Behind the Blind, and we have 2 translucent red wines in front of us, and we're assessing, we've established that they're grapes with less color pigment or less color intensity. You can see through it. Now we're looking at the tannin, because we thought that the second one with the lighter color might have less tannin, because the tannin and the colors in the skins. Which of the 2 wines has more tannin? Raise your hand if you think it's wine number 4. Raise your hand if wine number 5 for you has more tannin. Okay, so, and textural, like amount and texture are 2 different things, but the texture of the tannin on wine, on the second of the 2, how would you describe it?
Dusty, powdery, but very fine. Mm-hmm. But dense, there's a lot of them.
Yeah. Woo! That is like grabbing you, and yes, it's this one, the tannins are beautifully balanced in that wine, but it's definitely, to me, they're higher and they're more grippy and gritty. So going back to our texture, let's think about this, because when we describe tannin, that really helps us to hone in on what the grape variety might be. And actually, let's take a look at that. We've got a kind of cool little graphic of tannin texture range. And it's, again, back to fabric, because if you think about it, if you're wearing silk or satin, it's just sliding across your skin. And silky or satiny tannins are just sliding across your palate. Whereas if you're wearing tweed, it's got some texture to it. It's giving you a run for your money. And it's got some heft, it's got some grittiness and some grip. When I taste this, I wanted to do a slide that showed, like, but this is like so retro, really a true chalkboard eraser when chalkboards were chalk and not dry erase, with chalk on it. Because if you dab that onto your tongue, that's exactly the texture I'm getting here right now, is like the felt with chalk stuck to it. So super intense. So a real big surprise here, right, for if you're just going off the color. So what's the difference? Is it color intensity, tannin intensity? How should people think about that?
The palate is obviously always far more important than the color and even, in my opinion, the aromatics. But even though wines can be paler in color or less on the purple spectrum and more on the garnet or red, it doesn't necessarily have association or an indication of the thickness of the skin.
Right.
Those high tannins are almost always coming from a thick-skinned grape variety.
So you can have a see-through wine from thick skins, basically, is what you're saying, because of why we're able to see through it is because it's not purple.
Exactly, and even on the garnet spectrum, it's still, yeah, I can read through it.
Oh yeah, big time. I
But,
mean, this is quite pale.
Yeah, we're just looking at a different type of anthocyanin, a different color compound that's also not as stable. So
Right.
over time,
So you lose it quickly.
it will become more so garnet.
So what this says to me is, well, I mean, I love it when they're this distinct because it makes it, if you're used to tasting grape varieties that you can see through and you're trying to get to them, these are really great examples of where you could take that fork in the road. But when I have that kind of tannin in the second of the two reds, it immediately takes me to food because you need fat, you need protein to cut through. But I also think that we can play with the more detail on these wines because they're both pretty aromatically interesting. And so they both, to me, have an earth element in the nose. The wine 4, the earth is more of like truffles. And I just saw Ken Frank from La Toque. If any of you are, most of you are probably Napa locals, you know he's like the truffle god. And he said, truffle season starting? I'm like, is there no longer, there's like, truffle season seems to be all the time now because there's so many places now. But I think, so I really want you to try the mushroom duxelle with this wine number 4 because it's an absolutely, to me, it's like the mushroom texture, especially when it's beautifully cooked in duxelle, is just super finely chopped, which thank you, chef, what a pain in the butt to chop them this fine. But that's what you do with French technique is stuff that's a pain. But it pays off. You get that gorgeous, tender texture of mushroom, and then it's seasoned with a little bit of butter. It's got a little bit of shallot, and you're getting almost that textural similarity of this wine, which is that satiny kind of tender, I guess is the word I have for it. Did you try that pairing? It's pretty good. Yeah, yeah. Earth plus earth, and then texture plus texture together. Those two. I think it'll also be delicious with the next red, the one that's got more tannin, because I think the fat in that will help, bring the tannins down, and that's typically what we're looking for. But I also think it is the second one has this kind of earthy, like kind of just bad boy, like not trying to be refined, definitely being very just swarthy quality, which makes me want to taste it with the chorizo. So I think you guys should try that.
Yeah, muscular and
just kind of like, not afraid to be, but then obviously like it's pale and it has this aromatic, like the aromatics there's some pretty earth there, but there's also some savory. And let's do our red fruit spectrum because we do have a slide for that. And it's very interesting, same thing. You can go from lean and tangy to juicy and mouthwatering to lush and exotic. And you should think about this right now. Like, what am I getting on these? Is it lean and tangy fruits? Are they the cranberries and the pomegranates of the world, which all have a tartness? Red currant, I mean, you don't even eat, other than pomegranate, you don't eat red currants or cranberries without some kind of sweetening to them. I'm getting almost more of a cranberry and a sour cherry on wine 5 versus a juicier, softer berry, a riper berry on wine 4. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, wine 5 for me is a lot of really dried fruit characteristics.
Dried fruits,
as well.
Yeah, great point. Almost dried cranberries, like the craisins that people throw on salads to ruin them. Just kidding. I like craisins, but not in a salad. Sorry. So we're gonna do a little quick poll before we move on to our last wine, because I'm just curious, now that you have the chance to, you got 2 of them, you get 2 choices for this question. We didn't even talk about Mencia, but it's the grape of northern Spain's Bierzo. Wait, did I get that right? Bierzo region?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Suddenly
Ribera Sacra,
I felt like maybe I forgot. Somebody mentioned Nebbiolo. You have Pinot Noir as a choice. You have Gamay as a choice. We talked about Grenache. Did I spell it correctly? I did. Yay. So we've got some votes coming in. You know what? Honestly, all of your votes are good. Nebbiolo's dropping. Nebbiolo's rising. Grenache is jumping in there. How many people voted here? Oh, we got 20. Okay, good. So much of the room has half the room anyway, has voted. All right, so once again, you guys show your prowess. There is a Pinot Noir here and there is a Nebbiolo here. Yes, okay. All right, so go ahead and give us the wave. No, don't do that because you have 6 glasses in front of you. But raise your hand if wine 4, if you think it's Pinot Noir. Okay, and raise your hand if you think it's Nebbiolo. Raise your hand if you think it's something else. All right, we got a few of those. Okay, excellent. Okay, let's go ahead and do our reveal. Wine number 4 is the Patz and Hall Hyde Vineyard Pinot Noir from Carneros. And wonderful, wonderful winery and people and wonderful wines. So it's, as you can see, they specifically call out that it's the Hyde Calera Pinot Noir clone. Let's just say that there could be a whole Star Wars-like series on clones and Clone Wars and everything to do with Pinot Noir, like debating and interestingness, and so.
Your next documentary.
Yeah, next documentary, exactly. So, and then our wine number 5, let's reveal that one. And this is the Vietti Perbacco, and that's their Nebbiolo Langhe district. So 100% Nebbiolo from between the Barolo and Barbaresco zones of Italy. And just remember, it as the master sommelier sort of lexicon goes, face-ripping tannins. If you've got face-ripping tannins, you're not really going to see that on any of those other grape varieties that we gave you, whether it's the Mencia or the Grenache or what have you. They're just not going to have that same grip and hardness.
Do you find the tannins hit you on the gums more than they do?
Yeah, and then they just don't stop. And they just don't stop, all of which is to say that there is a solution to the problem. Not that they're a problem, because you want the wine to be classic to what it is, but in terms of just, if you want to soften those tannins, you go to Piedmont and you have truffle risotto. And that's how it's done.
Although the high acid in the wine, I think, also, as it makes your mouth water, compensates for the
Absolutely,
astringency,
yeah.
too.
So it gives you a great, so how many people tried it with the bacala? I know I told you to try that before. It really nice, right? It's so interesting. You would not expect a salt cod-based fritter to necessarily be like, oh, I'm going to have that with Langhe Nebbiolo from Italy or any red wine. So good, right? The spices are coming in there and it's really nice. And then the tofu cream just kind of rounds it out and you get a nice textural balance. So delicious. Okay, let's get to our last red wine. And we're going to go a little bit over time here because I was very excited about this lineup. Now, we cannot see through the wine. And so we have, what are the possibilities for grape varieties, just based on the color? Cabernet, what else? Merlot, for sure. What else? Syrah, okay. Malbec, okay.
Yeah,
Could
sure.
be, absolutely. Those are all good. So once again, your expertise is shining through here. So then if we're going to think about, and let's look back at our fruit spectrum here, because I want to remind you, as you're smelling it, go ahead and taste it. Where does this sit on the fruit spectrum? And sometimes we also, not only do we talk about the taste and smell profile, but especially the taste and texture profile, but also the color, because we go from kind of pale red fruits to darker red fruits going into purple and then even blue and black, right? Because blackberries, blueberries, those are really intense in their character. They come through. So what are we getting? Are we getting red fruits? Are we getting blue and black? Or where do we sit?
Or sometimes if you have all three, it could be indication of uneven ripening or a blend of different varieties.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. And then go ahead and taste the wine. And I think what you're going to see here is a completely different tannin texture. It's got quite a bit of tannin, but it's not the same type. It's not the same texture of tannin. And so let's take a look at our our wine for texture, because what we're going to see is that we move, let's see, wine 6 texture, sorry. We've got a slide to show you the range, because we had already looked at satiny and tweedy, or, you know, that more of a nub and a grip and a grit. And then we move into still a high tannin, but it's a velvet textured tannin. And that is because it's sort of a little bit like sand on the beach. You've probably been to beaches where the sand is so fine, it's like powdered sugar on your feet. And you've probably been to beaches where it's much more grainy. And truly, tannin molecules are different sizes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So if you're getting that more velvety, chunky, like how do you think about this wine? And either whether it's the tannin or the fruit, like how would people attack it?
For me, it's that ripe, round, but still structured, mouth coating, velvety, very nice. It's not plush. It has a little more density to it, but it doesn't have that fierce astringency of the Nebbiolo.
Yeah, and it's also kind of got like a creaminess to it. And one thing I'm not getting here, which helps me in terms of, I think, grape varieties, is anything much in the realm of green herbs or what, like we say technically, is pyrazine. Sometimes with things like Cabernet Sauvignon, you can get rosemary or cedar, things like that that are a little bit more in the plant, the non-fruit plant area and the green plant area. Any other words that you would have for this one?
Floral.
Ooh, I like it.
Not having to do with the tannins, but
no, absolutely.
That's the three things stick out for me with this grape variety, the style of wine in general from a region such as this is the violet florality.
Ooh,
and
violet.
That really nice ripe but not overripe plum and kind of a darker fruit profile, but also blue. And
how many people, this just, you know, I'm a product of a generation that ate Pop-Tarts, and I smell blueberry Pop-Tart filling right there, right? And that is a tell for me. That and the violet florals, and then we talked about the tannin. So we'll let you take a swag at guessing this, and we're giving you some choices that are all based on things that you guys said. But here you go. This is your opportunity to weigh in.
Hey, look at that, 50-50.
Yep. And if it were Syrah or Shiraz, for you, what would be there? You talked about floral and blue fruits. Zinfandel, if it were Syrah or Shiraz, what would be there for you?
Depending on location, I'd expect perhaps some black pepper, but
right,
blackberry for me.
Yeah,
Syrah very, very often.
All right. Well, we had some very, very good guesses there. All of them are good. Zinfandel. Nobody went Cabernet Sauvignon. I'm impressed with you guys, because the laterals for me are the ones that you selected. Let's do our reveal. Those who voted for Malbec, you are correct. Okay, a lot of excitement there in the crowd for that.
Team Malbec.
Okay, and Angélica Zapata. So this is a Catena, which of course, Bodega Catena Zapata is really kind of one of the jewels in the crown, and for sure a huge foot forward for Argentina, Mendoza. And this is, as you can see, it has a lot of new French oak, but it doesn't seem oak driven at all. It's got very much a characteristic expression of the Malbec grape variety. I just think it's a fantastic example. If I were doing a blind tasting, I would pray that this would be in there. because I feel like it's a good
Oh
example.
yeah, yeah. This is as classic as it gets in my opinion.
And I think and this is one we weren't expecting it, but we tasted it with the bacala, and we just thought it was fantastic. But then when I come back to it, I'm like, well, wait a minute though. Argentinian chimichurri sauce is like a very there's some stylistic or spice similarities in that, so maybe that isn't so weird that went well together. It's just interesting because when you go to Argentina, they just of course eat all the great beef all the time. But it's always fun when you can come up with stuff that isn't the typical that pairs really well with it. Did anybody try that combination?
Yeah.
The bacala with the couple yeah. Pretty. Any other things that you paired it with? You have to kiss a lot of frogs to find the princes. So, and by the way, this is not kissing a frog, but the popcorn goes with everything on the table. So you're not allowed to leave without having tasted the popcorn, with everything. Okay, any highlights? What were your favorite pairings tonight? Anybody taste something and say, I love this combination? Sausage and Nebbiolo, okay.
Yeah. Yay, Team Chorizo.
I believe that could technically be considered to be in the new food pyramid, right? Basically, yeah, I think so. Turn it upside down. Okay, turn it upside down, and we're good. In the back. The cheese went with everything. Yes. This is in my earthquake emergency kit, let me just say. Not quite, I shouldn't make light of that, but it is a cheese that I keep around constantly because I agree with you 100%. How about you? Did you have any major greatest hits?
I thought they were fantastic, and honestly, the Willamette Valley is quite proud of their salmon as well as their Pinot Noir.
True, so salmon and Pinot.
They often pair those, and I thought that was really nice with it as well.
Agree. Little smoky, texture, like all of that. And this is not a fishy salmon; it's a smoky salmon, so it's a really just a nice little bear hug. Thank you for the popcorn point because it's 100% true. That is, popcorn's on the cover of my yellow book, my pairing book, because I, went to culinary school and that's what I learned is that popcorn goes with everything. Just kidding, they did not teach me that. Yeah, but I'm not making this up. That's like a 20-year-old title that needs to be updated. Kim's gonna help me. But anyway, so couple things. Next episode of Quench, next month, it is July, America 250. And so we will be doing Route 60 the Icon American Wines, a little takeoff of Route 66 because I like my puns. It is also a special month for me. A lot of you who have come to these events or have joined us on Quench, you know that I've been working on this documentary called This World Cup, which is about the change in the global world of wine in the 50 years since the 1976 Paris tasting. So next month, July, starting for July, August, and September, the first 3 episodes of the documentary will be on Delta flights on the seatback entertainment system.
With some Taittinger.
So. If you're there, you'll see the sipping. You'll see terroir, and so I'm excited for that. So if you're flying Delta, first of all, thank you for flying Delta. Please search up the episodes and give me lots of views because if they get a good viewing stats, they'll stay on, and the next episodes will join as well. Kim, thank you for flying Delta last month.
I always.
And leaving some Taittinger for everybody, but
not much.
Yes, not much. But next month being America 250, we will be celebrating Icon American wines. But I did want to show you a little clip, my July 4th video from Stephen Spurrier, who's Paris Tasting with Patricia Gallagher, got it all started. And as you know, America 250 is the 250th anniversary of the U.S. It's also the 50th anniversary of the Paris Tasting, which was inspired by the bicentennial. So we'll take a look at that.
We've held lots of tastings, but we've never held a tasting of California wine. And the purpose is to draw attention to the quality of wine coming out of California. But I said, we need a peg to hang it on. And she said, I've got the exact peg that next year, 1976, is the bicentennial of the War of American Independence. And I said, well, Patricia, we British don't celebrate that because we lost the colonies, but I'll go along with it. It was too much of a risk to me to have these wines damned with faint praise. And so I told Patricia, I said, I'm going to choose the 4 best white Burgundies from the shop and the 4 best red Bordeauxs and put them in blind. And she said, you can't do that because the judges are coming just to taste California wine. I said, I'll explain it to them on the day, and if they don't agree, we won't do it. So, of course, all the judges turn up, and I said, most of you are not accustomed to these wines, and therefore I thought it would be more interesting to compare them blind to the top wines of Burgundy and Bordeaux. Do you have any problem with that? Bien sûr, Mr. Spurrier, pas de problème. And the rest is history.
So I think with that, I will toast to our wonderful partners here at Copia, our service team, spectacular, thank you. The culinary, Chris Lemerand and the Grove, really appreciate that. I did pick up my American wine in honor of America 250 next time.
I was going to ask, what it looks like everybody picked up their favorite.
Yep, which is perfect. So I hope that you'll, and those of you, I see quite a few comments from Facebook and from YouTube. Thank you for joining from home. We will have a nice edited version of this up on the site, on the channel in a couple of weeks, excuse me. I really would appreciate, even though you are here in person and all of you at home, if you would please subscribe to the channel, because the sooner I can get more people viewing it, the more we can get more of these episodes in places where we want people to see them and where we can enjoy them together. So Kim, congratulations on being America's newest Master of Wine.
Thank you.
And thank you for your expertise. The blind tasting thing is fun until it's not, and which is mostly not when you're testing. But in a venue like this, it's a blast. And thank you to all of you for spending the time, taking the time with us. Thank you to John for the audience cam. Appreciate that. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sam, my producer extraordinaire. And we will see all of you on July 15th for Root Sifty Sip. It's Tanya Pitts is our guest, American sommelier. Yep, she was the sommelier at, I'm just forgetting it now. Well, you guys know. Oh my gosh. Okay. One Market, thank you, in San Francisco, which was 100% American wine list, so she's the perfect person to take us through the icon American wines. Very excited to have that. Thank you all. We'll see you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.